Despite his advanced age of 77, John Conley remains one of the most distinctive vocalists to ever grace the Grand Ole Opry stage. His distinct baritone voice and straightforward tales set him apart in an era of dazzling flair and rhinestones. Conley didn't resemble the majority of country music performers. Many directors wanted him to have a more polished Nashville appearance because he wasn't born famous. In actuality, he had quite lowly beginnings. He wore thick glasses, sang about issues that ordinary people could identify with, and worked in a funeral home. Songs like Backside of 30 and Rose-Colored Glasses increased more than just the numbers. They went straight to the core of America's working class. However, behind the applause and the lights of the Opry stage, Conley's journey carried a weight that few people were ever aware of. For decades, he would remain silent about the true events that took place behind the Opry stage. Memories, friendships, rivalries, and concessions characterized his Opry days. At 77, he is at last prepared to speak the truth. He doesn't begin his story in a studio or on a stage. It begins amid the rolling hills of Versailles, Kentucky. In a small rural hamlet, people lived day to day, money to paycheck. Born in 1946, he was raised in a household that valued integrity and diligence above all else. John's father was a tobacco farmer, so he rapidly learned how to live in the country. The quiet evenings spent listening to the radio, the early mornings, and the steamy afternoons. He learned to appreciate the straightforward, frequently difficult, and incredibly proud existence he would later sing about from spending a lot of time in the fields. Conley didn't grow up dreaming of neon lights and stardom like many of his country music buddies did. He chose one of the most peculiar careers for a potential country star, mortuary science, because he preferred stability and regular work. John Conley dealt with death and sorrow on a daily basis as a licensed mortician at funeral homes before his voice became well known across the nation. He will never forget this unconventional career path. While other musicians wrote about love and loss from a high level, Conley had first-hand experience with how delicate life can be. He had arranged funerals, visited with grieving families, and understood that loss would never be completely gone. That knowledge would later permeate his songs and lend them a depth that distinguished him from other vocalists of his era. Despite his job at a funeral home, Conley's passion for music never faded. He began singing in church as a child and picked up the guitar when he was a teenager. He currently performs at parties and small gatherings in his neighborhood. Although he used music as an escape, he wasn't yet certain that he could turn it into a career. The prospect of succeeding in Nashville appeared unattainable for a youngster from Versailles, who wore thick glasses that would become his hallmark and had neither industry contacts or polish. Nevertheless, he continued to love him as an adult. After some time, a radio position became available. Conley secured a position at a local radio station as a disc jockey. He would talk on the microphone and play music every day. Although it was training, it wasn't thrilling. Conley gained a lot of knowledge about the music industry from behind the console by closely observing what people enjoyed and researching the patterns of country hits. He began penning his own songs, which were as honest as the ones he had heard growing up in Kentucky. However, considerable skepticism persisted. Moving to Nashville meant more than just a career advancement for me. It was a risk that might need sacrificing safety for unidentified dangers. John Conley managed to juggle his love and his responsibilities for years, until the allure of music became too great to resist. At last, the Kentucky youngster gave up on his dreams and turned his attention to Nashville, determined to prove that even a regular guy with a distinctive voice could hold his own among giants. John Conley wasn't the usual young aspirant that corporate executives were searching for when he arrived in Nashville. He wasn't ostentatious. He didn't appear to be a star. He had lights in his eyes and wasn't 20. He had a baritone voice, thick glasses, and appeared to have experienced a few more things in life than most Music Row musicians. He was already in his 30s. At first, the town's residents were unsure about how to feel about him. In a city full with dreams, his hue made him difficult to find. While working his radio shifts, Conley knocked on doors and distributed demo cassettes in an attempt to gain attention. Nashville was a horrible place for aspiring singers in the 1970s. The majority of the hundreds of hopefuls who came and went never even stepped foot on the Opry stage, much less a recording studio. Lee was aware of the unfavorable odds. However, he was genuine, something that few individuals possessed. He didn't sing about cowboy hats or dazzling lights. He sung about loneliness, aging, melancholy, and the common issues that most people face on a daily basis. His major break didn't come until 1978, with Rose-Colored Glasses, a tune that showcased both his singing and his outlook on life. The song, which Conley co-wrote, wasn't ostentatious or intended as a radio gimmick. It was heartfelt, unvarnished, and honest. The concept of not hiding behind lies resonated with people across the nation. Suddenly, John Conley was more than just another Nashville face. He was getting well known. Doors began to open as a result of years of hard work. Rose-Colored Glasses was followed by smash songs like Backside of 30, Lady Layown, and Friday Night Blues. These songs established him as a real-life performer whose music resonated with small-town families, truck drivers, farmers, and industrial workers. Conley never made an effort to be more significant than he actually was. His followers appreciated that he enjoyed performing for everyday folks. Despite his increasing notoriety, he was still unknown to many in Nashville's music industry. However, he was not considered a long-term answer by several leaders. He wasn't polished, ostentatious, or adequately packaged for magazine covers and television. However, the Opry, which is quite traditional and known for appreciating honesty, recognized his distinctiveness. Conley's performances were unique in that they were more than merely enjoyable. They were candid reports of actual events, or confessionals. Getting used to them wasn't simple. Conley faced rejections, skepticism, and severe criticism along the road. Nevertheless, his efforts were rewarded. The man who had worked on the radio and in a funeral home was now on the same stage as celebrities. Rumors of him being asked to the Opry grew stronger as his songs began to reach the top of the charts. On the ascent into Nashville, John Conley didn't give a damn about his appearance. The narrative focused on remaining loyal to oneself despite attempts by the business world to mold him into someone else. That honesty would undoubtedly be the crucial element that ultimately unlocked the most revered door in country music. By the early 1980s, John Conley was well known to fans of country music. Both in their hearts and on the charts, he had established himself. His voice could not be missed. When he performed, it felt more like a conversation than a spectacle, and his lyrics were really honest. Nevertheless, being asked to perform at the Grand Ole Opry was a huge event for all country musicians. For Conley, that year was 1981, and it would have a lasting impact on his life. The Grand Ole Opry was more than just a venue for entertainment. Stories were spoken and recalled there, and it was the epicenter of country music. The invitation was more than just an honor. It was a sign that you were a member of a decades-old family history and a rite of passage. The invitation meant that being authentic was still a significant aspect of the ritual for Conley, who had never been the normal person. The night he was formally accepted into the organization was one he would never forget. Conley felt the weight of history bearing down on him as he stood backstage. He reflected on his early years in Kentucky, his work at a mortuary, the late evenings spent playing records as a DJ, and the numerous doors that closed on him when he first arrived in Nashville. He was going to enter the stage where Patsy Cline, Roy Acuff, and Hank Williams had previously walked. His heart was pounding rapidly with pride and terror as his loved ones watched. He received a tremendous response when he eventually came out into the open. Many ordinary audience members gave him a hearty round of applause because they enjoyed his music. Conley later claimed that at the time, he didn't feel like a star. As a working man sharing their tales on the most sacred stage in country music, he felt like he was one of them. His entire tenure at the Opry was influenced by his humility, not just his performance that evening. However, joining the Opry was about more than just the publicity. It meant joining a tight-knit, occasionally tense family of artists bound together by tradition, rivalry, and respect. You had to respect the music, be consistent, and abide by the regulations when performing on the Opry stage. Because it was a part of something greater than the performer, each show had significance. John Conley felt pleased about all he had, battled for when he received the invitation to Opry. He didn't need to alter his identity, appearance, or values. When he arrived, he still had his baritone voice, heavy glasses, and working-class perspective. That was sufficient. More than sufficient. The induction was a dream come true, but it also marked the beginning of a new phase that was fraught with difficulties and demands that nobody else could see. There were customs, it was competitive, and there were unspoken norms. People in the wings were laughing, and the stage lights were dazzling. Conley had put a lot of effort into becoming a star, but it would be as difficult to stay alive in the Opry family as it was to get there. It was one thing to be on the Opry stage, but it was quite another to be behind the scenes. A realm that all performers had to navigate but that the majority of fans never saw. When John Conley joined the family in 1981, he soon discovered that the Opry was about more than just singing. The stakes were honor, tradition, and order. The atmosphere, backstage, was different, full of rivalry and camaraderie, anxiety and laughter. Legends and newcomers congregated there, and everyone had to put forth a lot of effort to get a position. Conley wasn't the kind to stir things up because he was from Kentucky and wore thick glasses. But he sensed the invisible laws at play. There was a lot of influence in the room from veterans like Roya Cuff. People felt better when Minnie Pearl made them giggle. And the flamboyant Porter Wagoner reminded everyone that the Opry valued personality as much as song. People expected you to know your songs, show consideration for the elderly, arrive on time, and above all, respect the stage's heritage. For Conley, these traditions seemed natural, since honesty and humility had been the cornerstones of his profession. However, that did not alleviate the tension. Errors were difficult to forget, and perfection was required every night at the Opry. He recalled moments when he got along with other vocalists, cracking jokes and observing the nervousness of up-and-coming performers. He also recalled supporting them when the weight of the attention became too much. However, he also recalled the competitions, the cunning glances, and the silent struggle for stage time and attention. The Opry was like a family, but when no one was present, there were arguments and egos getting in the way. Conley frequently reflected on his journey, wondering how a youngster from Versailles, Kentucky, became enmeshed in all the renown and legacy. He described it as both exciting and exhausting after many years. Legends were actual people behind the scenes. A musician might receive a reprimand from Hank Snow for playing the incorrect chord, or a novice might shed tears of happiness upon successfully completing their first performance. Conley was simply taking it all in because he believed it to be holy. Don't assume he was striving to be better than everyone else. The Opry served as a second home to him, in addition to being a venue for his musical performances. There, he discovered the value of patience, grace, and humility in a field that frequently ate its own. John Conley was aware that the true narrative of the Opry was being told in the dressing rooms, hallways, and quiet moments where history was being made one concert at a time, even while the audience was watching a well-prepared performance. John Conley understood that fame had a cost, and the thrill of performing on the Opry stage was not worth it. His private life was clouded by the spotlight, despite its brightness. Keeping up with the public persona of a country singer and the yadi, private life of a husband and parent got more difficult for him as his celebrity increased. The touring continued. They played night after night in fairs, stadiums, and honky-tonks for weeks. He loved meeting people who loved him, but he missed quiet nights at home, birthday celebrations, and dinners. Although the Opry was a dream come true, the performers were under pressure to maintain the institution's reputation through their appearances and performances. He carried the Opry's history, which could be somewhat weighty, along with his own identity when he took the stage. Despite his passion of music, Conley frequently claimed that he felt trapped by the demands of the industry. Even when he was exhausted, depressed, or under stress, he had to be on, smiling, and willing to shake hands and sign autographs when he was renowned. Although his songs about loneliness, heartbreak, and hardship were well liked by his fans, they occasionally revealed aspects of his own life that he didn't want to discuss. Like many artists, he experienced loneliness at times. The idea that, while many people were familiar with your voice, few truly understood who you were. Conley made an effort to maintain his stability as some of his friends developed unhealthy habits. Even yet, they were overcome by fatigue and mental stress. He placed a high value on his family and religion, and he frequently reminded himself that music was a gift rather than the one thing that defined him. He was still unable to escape the sacrifices. He felt guilty for choosing a life that demanded so much of everyone else, and for missing out on time with those he cared about. He's seen other artists in the background give up when they had to. Divorces occur, addictions force jobs to fail, and the pressure to perform constantly destroys lives. Rather than succumbing to the temptation to live fast and becoming exhausted, Conley opted for a more tranquil path. However, that didn't improve the journey. At one point, he believed that celebrity was a two-edged sword. It allowed him to pursue his ambition, but it also required him to sacrifice some aspects of himself. Conley didn't believe that fame would entail difficulty or self-harm. Rather, it required him to make silent sacrifices that were difficult for him, but that his admirers hardly ever saw. When the lights went off and he returned to his dressing room alone, the cheers in the Opry house weren't always enough to replace the emptiness he felt. Many country musicians at the time concentrated on creating well-crafted pictures. Conversely, John Conley's reputation was based on something far more enduring: honesty. In interviews, on stage, and behind the scenes at the Opry, Johnny was straightforward. People were astonished by this, yet it always revealed his true self. He didn't hide behind popular topics or kind language. He believed it was crucial to voice his opinions and stick to them, even when doing so wasn't cool. Conley was well known as the common man singer, and as a man whose principles resonated strongly with many Americans. During the 1980s crisis, when many family farms were losing their homes to debt, he advocated for American farmers. One of his most well-known actions was this. Conley was one of the few celebrities who dared to discuss difficult social topics. He became a member of Farm Aid and used his notoriety to raise awareness of the issues faced by working people. He sang about more than just unpleasant days, according to his fans. They witnessed him doing that in real life. His loyalty was another quality that set him apart. At the Opry, Conley frequently performed songs that extolled the virtues of America and showed his love for his homeland without fear. He was well known for his performances of "I Don't Remember Loving You," an unnerving ballad that demonstrated his ability to convey the emotional truth without sugarcoating it, and "They Also" Serve, a song that paid tribute to military families. He was adored by the Opry for it, but occasionally his urge to express himself openly conflicted with the more restrained persona that some members of the organization preferred. The history of the Opry was extensive. Realness was important to it, but so was maintaining order and propriety. Conley found it challenging to collaborate with those in the entertainment industry at times because he was straightforward, willing to discuss the issues faced by working men and women, championed causes close to his heart, and refused to pretend to appear like a polished celebrity. But Conley had no desire to be molded. He claimed that the essence of music was truth, and that its soul would be lost if that were to be removed. His beliefs served as the foundation for both his work and his position at the Opry. He was viewed by his fans as one of them, someone who both lived and sang their life. He didn't try to hide the fact that he wasn't a typical star and was proud of his glasses. Around this time, country music began to shift toward more flamboyant, mainstream sounds. He discussed the issues facing Middle America and the need of hard work. He therefore served as a bridge connecting the contemporary yearning for authenticity with the ancient Opry traditions of honesty. He was one of the most respected artists of his era, but he wasn't the wealthiest or most well-liked because he spoke his mind. John Conley is a role model for country music fans and other performers, as he is honest, real, and unafraid to speak the truth. Having lived through his Opry days, John Conley, now 77, has a different perspective on them. He has never before been open about the true significance of those years to him. Although it wasn't always what people expected, he claims that the Opry stage was the highlight of his career. On certain evenings, he stepped out under the bright lights, exhausted from touring, anxious from being separated from his loved ones, and under pressure to perform to the standards set by decades of tradition. He claims that he was frequently conflicted behind the scenes, feeling both grateful for the opportunity to pursue his passion and anxious by the ongoing pressure to do well. He claims that what others failed to notice was the silent skepticism that occasionally surfaced, the tiny voice that suggested he might not be a good fit for the greats whose names are inscribed throughout the annals of the Opry. Conley also discusses the supportive friendships he had throughout those years, which were kindly offered by other artists who understood how difficult life may be. He recalls getting a firm pat on the shoulder from Roy Acuff, or joking with Minnie Pearl late at night backstage. It serves as a reminder that even legendary people were once beginners attempting to find their place. He claims that because these connections helped him recall that the Opry was about more than simply songs, they were equally as significant as the music. No matter how difficult that family may be, it was about family. But he is aware of his error. He tells about how the road and the Opry schedule prevented him from spending more time with his children. He was troubled by these memories long after the cheers had subsided. Despite his advanced age of 77, he doesn't sugarcoat the truth. He lost things he will never regain because of his fame. Although he understands that people closest to him suffered, he is proud of the legacy he left behind. Conley's opinions, however, are straightforward and not malicious. He recalls his time in the Opry as a journey that shaped who he is now, filled with highs and lows, joy and sorrow. He's happy that performing on stage never made him compromise his values or his identity. He takes pride in the fact that his songs focus on everyday living rather than glamour and glamour. Now that he is in his late 70s, he is at last comfortable with the journey. He used to be skeptical, but these days he embraces reality. He is proud to have learned lessons from the issues that had caused him a great deal of trouble. John Conley doesn't think he had to prove himself at the Opry. He views it as a space where he can be himself, a man with a voice, rose-colored glasses, and a heart that never stops pounding for those who watch. One fact jumps out to John Conley more than the others when he reflects on his journey. He had no intention of becoming well-known, yet by being himself, he became one. He will be remembered for his honest music and the relationships he forged with millions of ordinary people, not for his accolades or news. Common Man, Backside of 30, and Rose-Colored Glasses weren't merely huge singles. After a long day at work, families would listen to the radio, farmers would sing while laboring in the fields, and truck drivers would sing while traveling vast distances. His voice made him renowned, but he also had a stage at the Opry. Conley, who is 77 years old, claims that he would rather be known as a truth-singing artist than a country music celebrity. He was honest about himself at all times. When others were searching for more attractive pictures, he spoke for the middle class, stood up for what he believed in, and wasn't hesitant to show off his glasses. Even now, individuals approach him to express their gratitude for giving their tales a voice, rather than to express how much they like him as a celebrity. That, he claims, is the most significant honor of all. Looking back, Conley realizes that the Opry was both a positive and a negative thing. However, he feels no remorse for his actions. He became an artist who never lost his roots because of the people he met, the lessons he learned, the things he gave up, and the things he won. His journey demonstrates that fitting a certain mold isn't the only way to be a successful country music artist. The song is about being honest, as long as his voice is heard in the Grand Ole Opry and in the lives of people who listen to the songs he penned. John Conley will always hold a special place in the annals of country music.